moment. If you're, folks, if it's not your item and you're not prepared to speak, please mute your phones. We do get a lot of feedback here from other phones. Let's see, I'm going to begin before we actually start the meeting. We are going to, I'll have to read a little a statement from the county. The following statements we make at each meeting here. So it has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes Chapter 12. We have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. We have also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the Cook County website. All votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded. Having said that, I am, before we begin the meeting, I'm going to make just a couple of comments. We have we'll begin with the Planning Commission meeting tonight, and then following that, we'll immediately have the Board of Adjustment. If you have an item on the agenda, or if you're a party that at the appropriate time from the public wishes to speak on any item, I'm going to ask you then to just begin each time, if you speak, with your name and address, so that we have that for the permanent public record of the hearing tonight. So having said that, I am going to begin the Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. We're going to start with a roll call of each commissioner, so we know who is here today. Adam Treefel, are you here?
Present, yes.
Okay. Jerry Hinneker?
Here.
Judy Machenbacher?
Here.
Charlie Laborda?
Here.
Greg Mueller?
Here.
John Schlut?
Here.
Is Commissioner Dukirk with us as well?
Absolutely.
Well, I expected you were there, Heidi. Okay. So we have and I'm obviously here, so we have a full slate of commissioners here for this meeting. Now, the next item here will be to adopt the agenda and the minutes of the June 10th, 2020 meeting. If you had a moment to have checked those minutes, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is that Jerry?
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, John Sloat.
Okay, John. Any comments or discussion or changes to the agenda or the minutes? Hearing no further.
This is John Sloat.
Yes, John.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Sloat. I would like to add one item I'd like to discuss. Maybe it's a little late, but I'd like to discuss the possibility of asking for a short moratorium on any new ordinances, asking the county commission to maybe hold off on any new ordinances to be placed with us.
Okay. Let's see. Well, at the end of the, we'll put that at the end of the agenda, and we can have a brief discussion and see what everybody.
Commissioner Schlut, does that refer to the items that we've had on our docket for a couple of months, or is that a new bailiwick altogether?
No, it's a new.
Okay.
A new, just a discussion I would like to entertain.
And Director Nelson is present, I believe. Is that right, Tim?
Yes, I am present,
okay.
and happy to discuss that as an item. We do have, several amendments that we'd like to put in the hopper, but we can discuss that as an agenda item when we get to that point.
Sure. We'll add that to the end of the Planning Commission agenda and have a brief discussion at that point. Okay. Anything else? Well, with that addition to the agenda, I would call for a vote then. Adam Treefel.
Aye.
Jerry Hineker.
Aye.
Judy Machenbacher.
Aye.
Charlie Laboda.
Aye.
Greg Mueller.
Aye.
John Schlitz.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, so the motion's passed. All right, moving to our new business. We have one item. Charles Van Dorn, on behalf of Marjorie and Gary Lenius, requests for an interim use permit to establish a commercial fuel facility in the general commercial zone district on property adjacent to the Cross River and Highway 61. Legal description is part of the southeast one quarter of the southeast one quarter of Section 36, Township 59 North, Range 5 West, PID 20-336-4450. Mr. Lien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before beginning, Chuck and Mary, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Mr. Chair, this is case 2020-11 CUP. And for a preface to the considerations itself, a conditional use is an activity or use that would not be appropriate if allowed outright in any number, but which if controlled as to number, location, and activity could be consistent with a comprehensive plan and not be injurious to the public health, safety, or general welfare. The review of each proposed use must determine that it will or will not be compatible with the standard of this article, and if it is found to be, must attach conditions to ensure this continued compatibility. Moving on to considerations. The Lenius parcel is situated within a property mosaic that includes state, township, and private ownership. The parcel has been with the Van Doren family since 1973 and is the former site of the Cross River Cafe, which was lost to fire in 2002. 2002 variance to rebuild the cafe within MnDOT right-of-way restrictions was approved by the Board of Adjustment, but reconstruction was never undertaken, and the parcel has been vacant since that catastrophic loss. The parcel itself is contained within the general commercial zone district and includes 1.1 acres and approximately 115 feet of frontage on the MnDOT Highway 61 right-of-way. In addition, the property abuts the Cross River with frontage extending to both the north and south shorelines. Bluff resources are present on the property. The applicant proposes the installation of two above-ground fuel tanks, 8,400 and 12,600 gallons. The intent is to provide on- and off-road fueling services, diesel for commercial, local, and long-haul trucking operations. As described by the applicant, this self-serve facility will provide an alternative fuel source outside of the congested refueling operations currently available in Cook County. While this IUP obviously involves county oversight, installation and operation of the tanks requires compliance reporting with the state, according to Minnesota Rule 7151, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and federal agencies, notably the Environmental Protection Agency Spill and Protection and Prevention Plan. State guidelines require a double-walled containment system along with corrosion safeguards for above-ground tanks. However, as self-serve, there is no ability to intervene during a spill event, and so tank infrastructure integrity and on-site protection is critical to ensure safe operations and to minimize potential environmental impacts. Land Services visited the property mindful of access and property layout. Of immediate interest is the proximity to the Cross River and the recreational support it receives in the form of parking, walkways, and connections to the river and the Cross River Heritage Center. Despite a wide swath of general commercial zoning, residential properties are common, with several abutting the Lenius Van Doren parcel. As submitted, Land Services suggests that plans for construction, containment, mitigation, and implementation of the proposed use are not clear and minimally would require an engineered submittal, and following that, a regulatory engineered review. But other questions raised by the application have not been resolved and warrant resolution. For example, we would want to know specifics, not generalities, about berm construction. Do they satisfy emergency operations? What is the procedure for a spill? How would the operations impact adjacent residences? Does refueling preclude use of the parking spaces in the MnDOT right-of-way? Some of these concerns could be agency-based, and while we solicited comments from MnDOT and the Minnesota DNR, we have yet to receive a response. Even without their input, however, we would urge caution because the worst-case scenario of operations could be catastrophic at multiple levels of the shared landscape. On the surface, the logistics of over-the-road vehicles entering and exiting the high-volume traffic corridor seems conflicted. Sight lines are obstructed, vehicular and pedestrian traffic can be high, and the interface of the Lien-Van Doren property with the Highway 61 corridor is only 115 feet, suggesting there assuredly will have to be truck adjustments, backing up, etc., to refuel. Is this a good idea? Absolutely. Is this a good location? That remains within the domain of the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners. Perhaps with greater preparation, some of those concerns could be addressed, but until they are and until we receive a cohesive, comprehensive application, this request leaves us with more questions than answers. Moving forward, the following considerations may be applied to this interim use permit request. The initial permit shall be valid for 2 years. Thereafter, renewal of the permit shall be required for each 5-year period of operation. 2, lighting on the site shall be down-directed and activated only during refueling operations. 3, the property shall comply with Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County Septic Ordinance. 4, berm construction shall be allowed only with an engineering plan and procedure. An engineering review of the berm shall be necessary prior to construction. 5, during each year of operation, the facility shall be annually inspected by Land Services no later than December 31st. 6, the applicant shall be responsible for an annual report identifying site modifications, operations, volume and type of fuel dispensed, customer base, hours of use, accidents resulting in spills, and other criteria as identified by the Planning Commission at its July 8th, 2020 meeting. 7, all state requirements for above-ground storage tanks identified in Minnesota Rule 7151 shall be met. 8, all Minnesota Pollution Control Agency requirements for refueling and above-ground fuel storage shall be identified and adhered to for all phases of this operation. 9, spill protocols shall be adhered to throughout the duration of county permitting. An industrial spill prevention kit shall be available on site and accessible to all facility users. 10, it shall be the responsibility of the operator to adhere to Minnesota Pollution Control Agency spill notification requirements, including verbal notification of spills within 24 hours of their occurrence. 11, it shall be the responsibility of the operator to contact Land Services within 24 hours of a spill incident. 12, any signage shall comply with the Cook County sign ordinance. And 13, this permit shall expire upon sale or transfer of the property. We sent out 34 letters of notification. At the time of this narrative preparation, Land Services received 2 verbal anonymous comments, 1 written anonymous comment, and 3 letters from Greg Mangan, Charlie and Deidre Mugley, and Dion Sechek. All were in opposition to the request.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. The Van Dorens, would you care to add anything you'd like to the Bill's comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay, then we will open it up to the public for any comment that the public may have. Anyone listening that wishes to speak to the Van Dorn request for a condition or an interim use permit, now would be your opportunity. Anyone wish to speak in front of the public to the Van Dorn application? Well, hearing none, then I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing and turn to...
Good evening, sir.
I'm sorry.
Good evening, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay, we
My
want
name
to,
is Rebecca Milbrand. Oh,
okay, and your address, Rebecca?
yep, it is 18 Baraga Cross Road.
Okay. What do you,
And I've had a chance to review the letters and the proposal, and I would concur with many of the concerns that are raised as part of this request. I would also like to draw attention to the Schroeder comprehensive plan that's available on your website, which addresses this area and the desired future conditions for development within the area along Highway 61 east from Taconic Harbor to Setback River State Park. And the conditions that are indicated in here as desirable by the, as approved by the town of Schroeder, indicates that that this area would be developed as a focal point for commercial development with mixed uses of residential and general commercial development are to be encouraged. And I just feel that, you know, an above ground storage tank and refueling certainly does not honor the indication and the desire of the town of Schroeder for this area.
okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to the application of the Van Dorns for this lot in Schroeder? Now is your opportunity. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, I am going to close the public hearing, and we'll turn to, if you're not at this point speaking to us, we really encourage you to mute your phone if you can, your computer. We do get a lot of feedback, a lot of clearing of throats and stuff flying at us over here, so I'd appreciate it. Let's turn to the commissioners for any comments that they have. Anyone have any comments they wish to, or concerns?
Okay, not hearing anybody else, I guess I'll step in. This is Jerry.
Yes, Commissioner Henniker.
I've looked at the proposal and I have actually two concerns. Number one, the location does not seem to fit the project. It seems well out of context of a safe operation, a convenient operation. Although the service may be needed, this is not the place to do it. The second thing is another concern of mine that's a little separate, in that any fueling station that does not also include electric recharging stations bother me a lot. If it's a refueling station, it should include both electric and gas applications. So those are my two main concerns. I just don't think it fits the environment.
Yeah, thank you. Other commissioners?
This is Commissioner Schlote, and I too do have concerns with the location of, I'm afraid it's going to affect some of the parking area there. The self-serve really bothers me, that there could be a spill and it would be unreported, and there'd be some environmental issues going into Cross River and into ultimately Lake Superior. 20,000 gallons is quite a bit of fuel sitting there, up to 20,000. And I just don't think it's quite the right place for it. Again, great idea. It's needed in the area, but I just think that that's the wrong piece of property for it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners?
I have a question.
Excuse me. Commissioner Mottenbacher.
Just
Go ahead.
diesel fuel, or would it be gasoline?
It would be just diesel. It would be on-road and off-road fuel. The area, as tight as it is, having anything else other than that there doesn't make any, there's no room for that much. I said well, No, that's all it would be the diesel fuel. Can I make a comment back towards the previous speaker?
Sure.
On the drainage, if you were to look at the diagrams that have been drawn up and submitted, the concrete itself is a 20 feet wide by 30 feet long, and the pump is on the edge of it, spread between 15 feet each side on the concrete. That pad where the trucks would be fueling at is all sloped, and there'd be a drainage there, along with the pad that the fuel tanks themselves sit on. There would be a foot-high barrier all the way around it. Both of them would have drains on them. They both go into a dike. It would be a 9,000-gallon dike. So, Lord forbid, the worst thing that could happen is for somebody to hook up to pump the fuel and it would spill. The largest tanker that could deliver there would be 8,500 gallons. The tank or the dike itself would be 9,000. So even worst case scenario spill, I would be able to contain that. Each and every time we end up with rain, I would be out there with these diapers that they make and get the oil and the residual off the top before I would drain the water off of that dike. So containment of spills, I've covered as much as I can. When comments are made about the entrance and exit of the property, we are in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. It isn't like you can't see when you stick your nose up there. There's enough sidewalk between the highway and the highway, or between where you're at. The sidewalk is enough of a gap that you can see both ways relatively well. Is it a little tight? Yes, it is. But at the same time, when you go to any of the service stations in the area, trying to get in there, it's very painful. They have these would be high-speed pumps, so that whoever comes in to purchase their fuel would be in and out of there relatively quickly. It wouldn't be, putting out 125 gallons of fuel into my semi takes me 20 to 25 minutes, and it doesn't matter which station that I'm getting fuel from in Cook County. Off-road fuel, you have to go to Grand Marais to get it, or you have to go to Beaver Bay to get it. That is a good thing for many of the people that own heavy equipment that need their fuel. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners have comments?
I have more comments.
Go ahead, Judy.
I'm trying to think of who the customers would be, and immediately came to big semis, but I'm hearing construction equipment, off-road ATVs. Who would be the customers?
You would be looking at contractors. Like I said, you're looking at diesel on-road and off-road is what you're looking at. So you're looking at all the logging operations that are in the county that are out this way. All your contractors, as in dump trucks and dozers and heavy equipment doing road repairs or landscaping or septics or any of those individuals. You wouldn't have ATV traffic and you wouldn't have any car traffic. As for parking in that lot, if this happens, I would be putting no parking signs all the way through there. So I don't want somebody to loiter there. I want them to come in and get their fuel and get back out. So, I mean, if they want to loiter, they can go to the Wayside Rest on either side of the river because there's parking, ample parking in both of those spots.
That's the other question I have, Chuck, is your property size and dimensions, and what percent of your lot will be taken up with this tank set up? And the parking that's there, who, there's places where people park and leave cars for sale and whatnot. Who owns that? Is that yours or is that belong to somebody else?
I think that is state right of way. Is it? Am I coming through?
Yes.
Yes. That is state right of way. I'm pretty sure that those access and them parking spots will still be there. It's just between the end of that parking spot to the curb that I would be putting no parking signs in, so that somebody doesn't drive in there, get fuel, and then stay in front of the pumps or just barely move over some. No, I don't want them to. I want them to fuel and get out of the way. I'm set up so that there's only one side of the pump that you can access. So as for fueling, you've only got one that can fuel at a time. So, you know what I'm saying? There's very, very small amount of room. As for accessing, semis can access that, and like I said, getting in and back on the road or getting off the road. Here in a 40 zone, I myself driving in there with my semi with the trailer on the back was easily able to drive into where I planned on having the pumps and easily exit out of there and access back onto the highway.
So you wouldn't have to back up to get out, you drive through?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a pull through?
Yes.
Okay. And tell me, who uses the off-road fuel?
Off-road fuel would be everybody that has logging equipment, anything that isn't driven down the highway. So that means all your dozers and your off-highway equipment is mainly what takes your off-road fuel. You know, between you got Donick there and you got the Johnson boys up there in Grand Marais and Isaac Hansen and Sons up on top of the hill here with his dump trucks and like I said, numerous other contractors around the area. There's quite a few that would access or that would utilize these pumps.
Okay.
Like I said, all of us right now are trying to wedgie ourselves into the holiday station in Coffee, and don't get me wrong, Brian has a very nice establishment there, but at the same time, trying to stick my truck in there in the middle of the day, you drove in the middle of the day, it's stuck up in your car, you stick that truck in there and you're 80 feet long, it's a tough ordeal to try to wiggle yourself around to get fuel.
Right. And they basically have gone to one pump, two-sided pump, and there's 3 or 4 of them there. And sometimes you can't, you have to wait with a car.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see the need. I'm just debating about whether that's the right spot.
Well, like I said, like I said, in the beginning it was a 3,000 gallon dike, and then I decided, you know what, let's make sure that we're safe. Let's make sure that the worst case scenario, I can cover it. I can, you know, the only way that I would lose any more fuel than that would be too much for that dike, the tanks would have to blow apart, you know? And I mean, then we're looking at a complete devastation in that. I mean, the chance of that is none, you know? I mean, you know, like I said, normal spills are when somebody's sitting there and they put fuel on. You've stepped in spills over at the holiday station, I'm sure. Like I said, where the fuel tanks are at, or where the fuel pump is at, all that concrete will be sloped. None of that fuel will ever cross over that sidewalk and hit a drain going towards Cross River. All that concrete will all slope right back to a drain. In the wintertime, that pipe for that drain and the drain that'll be around where the fuel tanks are sitting, there'll be heat tape on those lines. Inside of that dike, in the winter months, there'll be a snow blower sitting there to make sure that it's blown clean, so that in case there's a spill in the wintertime, somebody spills, you can remedy that situation easy enough.
Okay.
Is there an example of what you have there somewhere else in the county that's working?
No, nobody has any. Well, maybe. Let my ODA people answer this question. Pardon
have some references in the general area that would be you could easily go to and get an idea of the models and types. We're doing similar systems right now for the St. Louis County as well. They're buying very similar systems along with the Duluth Transit Authority. So it's a pretty common system for typically a a local, though for resale, it's for local account type of fleet fueling system. Very, very common actually. We typically don't put in an extra dike on the tank. It's not required by any of the codes. But that's something we typically don't do. That would be above and beyond for a worst case scenario of an accidental overfill.
Okay, I guess the question really was, can you give a site in the county? We're kind of going down the roadways. Mr. Lien?
Let me just interject, Mr. Chair.
Just hold on, Judy.
I would have to provide references after this with the addresses.
Yeah, all right, we'll deal with that. But, well, okay, hold on a minute. Staff. Yeah, okay, just hold on. Staff wants to speak here.
Yes, and Mr. Chair and commissioners and participants, in 2018, Dean Berglund received a interim use permit for a refueling station up at his gravel pit up off the Gunflint Trail. That was a 2-year interim use permit. That has expired. So that would be as close as we would have for a facility similar to what Mr. Van Doren wants to put in.
Did they remove that?
They did not construct it.
Oh,
Yeah, they got the permit but did not go through with it a couple of years ago.
what's up at Poplar Mid-Trail Trail Center? Don't they have a fueling station?
No.
No, it's not anything like what Chuck is talking about. Judy, this is Heidi. The one that we approved in 2018 for Dean Berglund, basically across the street from my house, did not have any of the stuff that Charlie's talking about. It didn't have any of the protections. It was just a double wall system. And it had automatic shut-off, automatic lighting, and things like that. There was going to be no one on property. There was going to be no way to tell if there was a spill. There was no precautions like what this sounds like it has put in. And just a reminder for any of you who haven't been here very long, that building that's still standing there that's been a billion different businesses was a gas station. Right where Charlie's building.
Right. I'm wondering if the tanks have been removed. They must have.
Yes, they've been removed.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they didn't have the protections that Charlie's talking about.
No.
I mean, this is above and beyond what we approved for Berglund to do the same thing.
It's just that it's right next door to the Cross River.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's way more protection.
And Berglund's about 20 miles away from Lake Superior. That does make a little difference in my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one up here is next to Devil Trap River.
There's numerous ones down on many marinas too.
That's
Like I said, I mean, everything that, even if this was to be torn down in 20 years, you would take out the concrete, but you would have no digging of dirt up because any spill of any sort will hit that 9,000 gallon dike that will be hid behind trees so you won't see it. And visually, visually it should be very acceptable. The tanks would be sitting lower than what the highway is there by 6 feet. So those tanks, as tall as they are, would only stick above ground 9 feet. And then I would have fencing, nice wood fencing all the way around them so you would never see them. Along with that, there would be a spot there hid so that there would be an outhouse sitting there. So nobody's defecating all over on the ground out there. They've got an outhouse to go to right there.
Okay, but thank you, sir. Other commissioners, do you have comments? Any other commissioner comments?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Adam. Would we be able to put those said environmental protection precautions that he said he'd be doing into the conditions on the permit?
I'll tell you my thought on that, Adam, is that we don't have plans that show these things, and without engineered plans, I don't know how you go forward with building something like this on the banks of the Cross River next to Lake Superior. I understand to say, oh, we're going to build a berm and we're going to do this, but we've got 8 by 11 sheets of paper that somebody scratched plans on. I don't know how we would begin to move this forward based on what we have on the table.
Sir, if you look at the one sheet there, you'll show there's a 3,000 gallon dike and how I would build it. All I did was move up from that 3,000 gallon dike and go up to a larger piece. As for next to the river, I'm still hundreds of feet or 150 feet away from the river, or 200 feet away from the river. Like I said, as for constructing a dike, I've been in on the operation of building one previous in my life, and it really isn't that hard of a piece to build. It's just a matter of, like I said, if it's written into the thing, it doesn't matter either way. I don't want to damage the environment any more than anybody else does. I got to make sure that it's done right and that environmentally we don't have to worry about an issue.
This is what OJ Equipment here, one of the contractors we're taking working. A lot of these issues do get covered in review with the spill plan.
Sir, but you're at, sir, just a minute, sir. We're kind of going down the road here. That's why we asked you to speak in the beginning, and now we're starting a long discussion during the commissioner's point of view. So what I would appreciate is if the commissioners have questions, I'd like to hear them. And if the contractor or Mr. Van Dorn is required to answer them, we'll get to that. But we're kind of getting into this debate session, and that's not productive. So I'm going to ask commissioners if you have further comments.
This is Commissioner Lamola.
Yes.
I would like to Adam's question about the protections that Charlie's talking about, that Chuck's talking about. In the proposed conditions, the engineered design is, if I understood it correctly, required and needs to be approved by Land Services before any work could begin. And provided that's in there and there can be an engineered design and approved by Land Services to take into account all the concerns that are being stated, I believe that covers that. That has to be engineered and designed and put together properly. And that is in the proposed conditions as they're stated right now.
I understand. Yeah. I understand what you're saying, Charlie. My point is that until I see them, I don't know what I'm approving. That sketches on paper that a person plans to build with all good intentions may not be what the engineers say is needed, and what MnDOT says is needed for accesses. I haven't seen a drawing for showing access to this, what kind of turning movements there are going to be, and that's just kind of standard traffic engineering when you're going to put a fueling station along the highway. So, I just think we're really short of data. I could not support this without a lot more data than this, and that's going beyond the environmental issues. I don't think it fits the neighborhood. If we look at, I want to back up for a few minutes, folks, to the requirements for this. On page 7, item B, it says the use conforms to the land use or comprehensive plan of the county. This may make that. The use is compatible with the existing neighborhood. Well, I think some of the neighbors have weighed in, and this is kind of a little tourist destination site with parking lots and people walking along the river. Trucks and equipment fueling. I just don't see how we could possibly say that this use is compatible with the existing neighborhood. As far as it impeding the orderly development, I'm not sure about that. But the location and character, number 4, of the proposed use is considered to be consistent with a desirable pattern of development for the area. We had a witness or a person cite earlier the town's own plan that this should be a gathering center for the community. This doesn't fit that. We are not supposed to grant a permit that does not meet all four of those conditions. I don't think we can do this. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Commissioner Henniker here.
Yes.
I'd like to add to that. I agree with that assessment. I also think that the whole project looks like we're taking a size 12 project and trying to shoehorn it into a size 10 site. It simply does not work. And I will again reiterate my concern that we are creating a fueling station that does not also include electrical recharging. We certainly need that up here. There are very few stations for that, and there's a growing body of people that would use that. And I think that if we don't have the space to consider that within this site, adding it on at a later time when the demand is higher, I think the site is absolutely inadequate for the project as proposed. I would absolutely oppose this project.
Other commissioners?
I'd like to comment that as far as the flavor of the neighborhood, there's this parcel, and next door is a defunct gas station, an attempted commercial business that looks to me like it's failed or failing, and then next to it is quite a big logging operation with a resident. So that may kind of lend itself to the neighborhood. I'd like to visualize it a little better than what we're seeing, and I think it could work if it's done well, and I think there's an appropriate need for something like this.
Other commissioners?
I'd like to just say that I agree with what Judy just pointed out, that I think it could also be argued that it does fit the character of the neighborhood, and I would like to, if we're denying it based on requesting more specific information, I think it would be reasonable to lay out exactly what information is being requested and what engineering will be required, so that the applicant can know what, can have some assurance that if he's going to invest in that engineering, that he would come out with a favorable outcome. That could be a significant outlay of capital with no assurance that this body would give them an approval. I know as a businessman, I wouldn't do that without some assurance that I would have an approval.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I would ask that those of you requesting more specific information be very specific about what it is.
Yes, because we have two different issues being talked about, the neighborhood issue, the character of the neighborhood, traffic, et cetera, and then you have the environmental concerns of the lake and the river. You have to meet, in my mind, I think you have to meet both of those, and I've heard different people express different sides on the environmental issues, and now we're talking about the practicality issues in the neighborhood. So I understand what you're saying, Charlie, and I agree. I wouldn't go forward without some kind of a understanding, but I don't have specific requests. I want to see a plan. If we're going to move forward with engineering plans, we need to see real plans. It can be preliminary plans, and not to do the whole design, but it's to just draw them on a piece of paper and say, I'm going to build this. I don't see any elevations or grades. And as I stood there on that property this afternoon, or this morning, I guess it was, standing there, and I'm standing there looking down at the property, trying to envision the site, and looking at the people, the tourists who are walking across the bridge, coming over to look at the river. And I had a difficult time merging those two pictures. It didn't seem to work. So I think we have some people have expressed environmental concerns beyond myself too. So I don't have an answer to that, Charlie. Yes.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Henniker here.
Yes.
A couple comments based on that, if I could.
Go ahead.
Number one, first of all, the fact that there was a gas station there and then no longer is suggest that maybe that's not an appropriate place for that. Second thing, in terms of the neighborhood has spoken, and all the letters and comments that we've received have not been in support of this project. They do not seem to want that. Does not match up to the neighborhood as the neighbors wish to see it. I think that in the location proposed, it is not a good project. Now, it is not up to us to define how somebody should make a project work for them. It's up to them to take a look at something and see if they can make a proposal that matches what the county interest is. And you're right. We have not seen any engineering to support that. We have not seen a proposal that includes all the concerns that we've got. Now, we don't have to, as a commission, enumerate those concerns other than to say, I think that you have not made a complete enough proposal for us to support at this time. If he wants to come back at a later time with a better proposal, one that solves some of the things that have been expressed here, I'm willing to listen to that. But at this point in time, no, I don't think that he has reached that point for consensus.
Thank you. Other thoughts from commissioners?
Achenbacher here. Would it be appropriate to table this until we see more specific plans?
I would think that might be a question for Mr. Van Doren. I mean, there's some, I guess.
As a commissioner, I would oppose that. I think that it is our job to either approve or deny. And if a motion is in order, I would make a proposal, a motion to deny.
All right. So we have a motion to deny. Do we have a second to that motion? We have, okay, John, all right, we have a second, we have a motion and a second. Now, further discussion.
We also have a heavy industrial site just down the road, which is now out of commission, but if there's any hope of it ever being reactivated or redesigned, this could be a part of that discussion. It's a real inconvenience and a hardship to have to drive 40 miles to get gas or fuel.
Commissioner Schlote, I have to agree with Judy on that. I think this is a great idea. I use off-road for heavy equipment, and it is tough to get the stuff, and I think it is needed in the area, but this little park-like setting here is just the wrong area, and the neighborhood has spoken against it. I'd either like to see further engineered plans or just have a table while we go through with the vote.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, hearing none.
This is Heidi.
Pardon me?
No, this is Heidi. Bill, doesn't the MPCA have to finalize anything even if the board approves it?
The MPCA has to comment. They have been solicited for comments. We haven't received anything. That's the same with MnDOT. Those are two inputs that we would certainly have preferred to have had for tonight's meeting. We haven't. Blame it on COVID, whatever. But those are certainly two inputs that we would want to have to go forward with planning and procedures.
Okay, but we didn't have comment on Bergland, and I thought that part of the only reason why the board approved it at that time was because they had the assurance that it could not go forward without MnDOT's approval. So is this one different?
No, that wasn't. No, and actually, the Bergland pit is a different scenario altogether. That's an esker. There are some wetland features on the property itself, but nothing that has an open water connection to any protected waterways. So as far as,
The county board are not protected by a final on the MPCA.
Say that again?
The planning commission and the county board would not be protected by a final sign-off on the MPCA.
I'm not sure what you're saying, Heidi, when you mean protected.
I'm confused.
So on the Berglund one, the planning commission approved it, then the county board approved it, but when we all approved that, we knew that it couldn't go forward without MPCA approval. It didn't matter if they commented before the meeting, we knew that they would have their eyes on it before it was ever finalized. So it sounds like this one is different, where there is no final approval from the MPCA. If you guys approve it and the county board approves it, then they can do whatever.
Well,
that correct?
yes and no.
This is Charles Van Dorn again.
Okay?
I talked to MPCA, and when I talked to them, they said that we don't come in until after the job is done. As strange as that may sound.
But after the job is done, can they look at it and say, I'm sorry that we don't feel that this is going to work and cancel the project?
I'm certainly guessing that they can. That's the reason why I've dotted my I's and I've crossed my T's. I'm trying to make sure that everybody is appeased here to try to make this happen.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's what I was wondering, because, you know, this is obviously more than you guys are used to approving. That was it.
Okay, so folks, we have a motion and a second on the table. Do I have further discussion from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote. This motion is to deny this application. Adam Treefel.
Yeah, at this point, I will have to vote to deny. I just don't have enough information to prove it.
Okay.
If I had more plans there, I would more than likely, but I have a lot more questions, so
All right.
I'll have to disapprove of it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Henniker?
Aye, I approve the denial.
Thank you. Commissioner Machenbacher?
I'll nay, and if it's voted down, are they allowed to bring it back to the planning commission without paying an additional fee?
Director Nelson, do you want to fee schedule us some smarts on that?
Okay, yeah, this is Director Nelson. What they can do is, if it is denied and they do want to bring it back, they can go ahead and reapply, and at that point, they can also request a waiving of the fee when it's in front of the planning commission. So the planning commission has that ability to go ahead and waive that fee, much like we do with the Board of Adjustments and such. So they could do it at that time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Laboda?
Nay.
Thank you. Commissioner Mueller? Commissioner Mueller, are you there, Greg? Is that you, Greg? I guess not. Commissioner Schlitz?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So what we have is, did I forget you, Charlie? No, you were a nay, yeah. We have 2 nays and 4 ayes to deny this. That will go to the county board and
28th.
28th. It'll be at the county board, which is, or you could bring it up again. So that is the end. Well, no, we're not going to adjourn the planning commission. We're going to move on to Commissioner Schlitz's request for discussion on moratoriums.
Yes.
What do you interest? Yep, you're up.
I would like for us to, we don't need to really make a vote or anything on this, but I think I'd like to express to the county commission that maybe we hold off on any new ordinances. I think that through this COVID situation, that we're probably having a tougher time communicating. I know last month I was not able to get into the meeting because of our phone system. And I think that there were probably a lot of other people who were not able to access our meeting because of True North not being able to access that surface exchange. And I think that before we start passing any major ordinances that are especially non-emergency, and being able to give everybody a chance to get their word in, including the public, I think we should maybe push to the board or to the county commission and ask that they just hold off on some of these ideas until we're able to meet as a body again in person.
Okay. Other commissioners have thoughts about that?
Actually, this is Commissioner Hennepin. I think that that's a reasonable idea. I think that when considering the ordinances, the ability of us to see each other face to face and discuss it in an open forum does make a lot of sense. I'm a little bothered by the fact that we're on telephone contact only. We're not even using Zoom. But I'm not sure that Zoom would really satisfy my concerns. I think that's right, that we really probably should hold off until we can be face to face again.
Okay.
That's all.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Tim.
Yeah, this is Tim Nelson again. Just a point of clarification, and this is what I wanted to kind of interject and get into. There are ordinances that are passed and considered that are actually not really a part of the Planning Commission discussion. So I wanted to clarify a couple things. If what the recommendation would be is going to the Board of Commissioners for any and all ordinances, or just those ordinances that would require the public hearing in front of the Planning Commission? And then secondly, does that also include any amendments that we might currently be considering to bring to the board to the Planning Commission to discuss? Because we do have some amendments, some of them are housekeeping and such like that. Is it just for any new ordinances, and is it just for specifically the Planning Commission? That's what I want to kind of get a clarification on.
As Commissioner Schlote, I would agree that just the ones that are going to be coming to the Planning Commission, we've gone through the vacation rental, and I think that any ATV ordinance, I think it would have been tough to get those through in a telephone conversation like we're having today.
So, as you said, John, I don't know that we're going to take any votes tonight, but we can...
Commissioner Henniker?
Okay, Jerry.
I agree with that, and but I do think that if there's some housekeeping stuff that we could attend to that's probably not particularly controversial or particularly challenging, we could certainly entertain that. But I would, again, keep it only to the ordinances that we as a planning commission might have some authority.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that this is something we would be making a motion and taking a hard vote on anyway. It's a matter of consensus, I think, that, and I'm hearing consensus. I'm not hearing anyone suggesting otherwise. I'd be interested in hearing if someone thinks this is a bad idea. But, if we have a consensus and staff knows it, and we can work through it. Does that make sense?
Hey, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, just real quick, I know somebody else was trying to interject something there. Frankly, most all of the ordinance work or anything that comes in front of the Planning Commission basically will come through our office first. And right now, I know there's really nothing on the horizon or on the table from the Board of Commissioners that would be directed into our office to do. So most all of the ordinance work would be coming from us. And so I think I can safely say that I believe Bill and I got the message that you're sending right now, and we will not, I can just say that we won't be we'll hold off on bringing the ordinance amendment until the Planning Commission directs otherwise.
Very, very good. With that, I think I would does somebody else want something there?
This is Commissioner Laboda. I just wanted to, I agree in principle, but I also think maybe this is something that we should, we're not really voting on it, if I understand right, but put a time frame on it, being that we don't know how long we may be meeting like this. There may be a need to actually conduct business, so maybe we want to just have this be brought up again in, 3 months or something, and continue this conversation versus just a blanket.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, my understanding of the staff, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, staff's going to just update us on what's happening, and if they think there's something that needs to happen, they'll bring it and we'll talk about it, and we can decide to move forward there at that time, huh? Does that make sense, Tim?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think that makes perfect sense. We could just kind of keep it as an updated basis, bring it up maybe every, maybe 3 months is good
Sure.
or so or whatever. If it becomes an issue, we will certainly put it up on the agenda if there's anything that we see that is really impending that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we would just hold out.
Very good. Thank you.
Don, this is Heidi.
Yes.
Oh, Heidi.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Commissioner Schlitz, where is this coming from? I'm quite confused about why this is coming up.
It's coming up because we do have ordinances that come in front of us. And quite simply, the communications that we're using right now with this telephone system, I mean, I was blocked out from communicating with you last month. The True North system was down for that exchange. And I'm sure there might have been other people who were trying to make public comment that couldn't make public comment. And I feel that that's a problem if we're going to pass some important ordinance and public input can't be made by the system that we're putting up. And I don't think it's fair to the people.
Okay, just the examples that you provided, like the vacation rental ordinance, that took like 5 years.
I realize that, but when it came up, we did that in a pretty short order. I mean, we did work that, and if people could have been not able to make their comments.
I absolutely understand.
Okay.
It's just, we don't have anything in the hopper. I mean, it takes years for an ordinance to develop, and there's nothing in the hopper.
Okay, I did not realize that. We don't always see what's in the hopper, if anything at all.
So we're fixing a problem that doesn't exist here, so let's adjourn this planning commission meeting.
I'm like, what do you know that I don't know? Because we don't have anything coming up.
How about a motion to adjourn?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Who I got that from first? John Schlitz?
From Commissioner Innocuous.
And Jerry, okay, we got a motion by John, second by Jerry. All in favor? Say aye. Oh, wait a minute, we gotta do, I'm sorry, we can't do that, I gotta do the roll call. Adam Treefel.
Aye.
Jerry Henniker.
Aye.
Judy Machenbacher.
Aye.
Charlie Laboda.
Aye.
Greg Mueller. Still absent. Okay, and John Schlitz.
Aye.
Very good, thank you, we are adjourned. And, going to take just a minute, Bill?
Yes.
Yeah, we're just going to take a couple of minutes, and we will jump into our Board of Adjustment agenda in just like maybe less than 5 minutes, okay?
Another one of those where Heidi chimes in with useful stuff that extended it. You hear me? Eh? Are you angry or what? Oh, no, we're taking a pause here before
Jerry,
finishing up the rest of the thing.
you're broadcasting.
Ah, sorry about that, Bill. make it go what?
Okay, let's call the Board of Adjustment for Wednesday, July 8th, 2020, Cook County to order. I read our little piece about the COVID, why we're meeting the way we did earlier in the meeting. If you have the opportunity, we'd please like you to mute your telephones. We're getting a lot of feedback and noise bouncing in here. Again, if you can mute until you need to speak, we'd appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order. The first item is to adopt an agenda and approve minutes. I guess maybe the first item, no, before I did that, I need to do a roll call again to make sure we are here for the Board of Adjustment. So, Adam Treefel.
Here.
Jerry Hineker. Jerry Hineker.
Here.
Judy Machenbacher. Charlie Laboda.
Here?
And I am here with Judy. Judy, are you there? Well, she'll probably check back in a minute, and we do have 4 out of the 5 recorded in, so we're going to just keep moving forward. Judy will probably be back with us in a few minutes. So I would like entertain a motion to adopt the minutes and the agenda, approve the minutes of the June 10th and adopt the agenda for this evening, Wednesday, July 8th. Do I have a motion to adopt those?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Henniker, I would make that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second there?
Second.
Judy, a second. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All right. All in favor? Excuse me. I did it again. We got to go back to our list. Adam.
Aye.
Jerry.
Aye.
Judy.
Aye.
Charlie.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay. Moving on. Our first item tonight is the Corey Anderson, a request for a variance from the septic tank or septic treatment area setback to modify a cabin on property adjacent to Tate Lake. The legal description is Lot 13, Block 1, legendary Lutzen Tate Lake sites. The PID is 273401130. Mr. Lien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is case 2020-17V. Property was created as part of the legendary Lutzen Tate Lake sites plat in 1978 and was purchased by the applicant in 2013. The parcel includes approximately 1.60 acres with 230 feet of shoreline on Tate Lake. Tate Lake is categorized as a recreational development, or RD lake, and structural and septic treatment setbacks on RD lakes are 100 feet. Hopefully you've all read the background and literature review, which is pertinent to this request. And for considerations, the property's original cabin was constructed in 2000 as a garage with living space and served as the primary dwelling until the applicant's purchase in 2013. Thereafter, the garage was converted into a residence and a separate garage living space placed on the property. A 2015 variance allowed enclosure of the lake-facing deck within the 100-foot shoreline setback. The property is heavily vegetated and exhibits moderate slopes towards the Tate Lake shoreline. Wetland and property resources, that is structures, define buildable area on the property, as does the proximity of the septic treatment area. The applicant has identified the need for a dwelling expansion intended to accommodate a year-round presence in Cook County. Given site layout, cabin expansion can only occur towards the property's entrance, which would place new construction within the 20-foot septic absorption area setback. Minnesota Rules 7080, Chapter 2150 identifies a 20-foot structural setback from a septic system's absorption area, and proposed construction will place it within 14 feet of that. Several items should be noted. First, the absorption area is typically applied in a downslope direction. Second, the Anderson Mound is on a level area which spreads out the absorption area and makes it less directional and more symmetric. A conversation with Cook County's Environmental Health Inspector, Michy Iverson, suggested the setback is necessary to ensure that mound discharges, effluent, do not interfere with structural components such as foundations. Given the relatively flat substrate of the mound, Mr. Iverson does not feel structural impacts would be a concern, and that, in fact, 14 feet is a reasonable setback distance under the context of a variance. This determination is facilitative to approval of the Anderson variance. If approved, a variance may be assigned the following conditions. 1, all permits shall be approved prior to the initiation of construction. 2, no component of the addition shall be closer than 14 feet from the septic system's absorption width. 3, all setback distances shall be verified by the Land Services. 4, all other construction on the property must conform to Cook County ordinances. And 5, the property shall conform to Minnesota rule and Cook County Environmental Health Department requirements. We sent out 24 letters of notification and received no comments.
Thank you, Mr. Lien. Mr. Anderson, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, would you like to add anything to the narrative that Bill's read?
No, it was pretty well stated. Basically, the only thing that I would add is the direction we're going right now with the potential build is going towards the east, as discussed and laid out, and it's currently, and was when we purchased it, gravel parking pad. So we're just bringing out to an already compacted substrate surface, and it's really the only way for us to build because we have the lake setback to the south, we have the septic mounds to the west, and we have the line from the actual, not the mounds, the holding tanks are to the west, and then the line from the holding tanks to the mound is to the north. So our limited ability to do this kind of puts it out into the driveway parking space. And that's all I really have to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone from the public that wishes to speak to the Anderson application? Now would be your opportunity. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak to the Anderson application? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to then close the public hearing portion of the and move to the commissioners. Any comments or questions from the board? Well, I'll say I did visit the property today, and I understand exactly what you're saying, Mr. Anderson, and I personally put a little weight into the our staff's what do I want to say? Not authorization, but their indication that the 14 feet is not a problem because of the configuration of that mound. So. If the environmental folks don't have a concern, I don't. Others from the staff, or excuse me, from the board, comments?
Seems like a reasonable request.
Yep, I think so. Any other comments? Well, hearing none, do I have a motion?
Commissioner Hiniker here.
Yes, Jerry.
Okay. I looking at the proposal, I find nothing that gives me cause for concern. I think that it's a reasonable proposal. I would support it.
All right, thank you. Other commissioners or members of the board?
Commissioner LeBona, I would make a motion to approve as with the conditions as stated.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have a second?
I second it, Commissioner Henniker.
Thank you, Jerry. So we have a motion and a second to approve the Anderson request. Further requests or, further comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Commissioner Treefel?
Aye.
Commissioner Henniker?
Aye.
Commissioner Machenbacher?
Aye.
Commissioner Laboda?
Aye.
And I'm as aye as well, so it has passed 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We'll move on.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, Joe.
Thank you. The next item we have is the Brian Burley request for a variance from the vegetation line setback to enclose a carport attached to a cabin on property adjacent to Lake Superior. The legal description is part of Government Lot 1, Section 17, Township 60 North, Range 2 West, PID 51-017-4450. Mr. Lien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is case 2020-16V. The Burley property was purchased in 2020 and includes 2 acres and 200 feet of Lake Superior shoreline. Property is entirely contained within the single-family residential or R1 zone district. Lake Superior is categorized as a general development lake and includes 40-foot structural setbacks from the vegetation line and 100-foot septic treatment setbacks. Just as a reminder, the setback is defined as the minimum horizontal distance between where a structure may be placed and the normal high water mark, road center line, road right-of-way, front side or rear lot line, well, sewage, soil absorption, and or soil treatment area, and should also include the vegetation line on Lake Superior. Considerations. At the time of their 2020 purchase, the Burley property supported a 1,343 square foot cabin and 274 square foot deck, both constructed around 1969. The dwelling has been largely unimproved since construction, and the most recent assessor's office depreciation value of 80% suggests some compromise of the structure's integrity. The parcel is notable for its dense vegetation, and the retention of its shrub and old forest canopy has served to leave a natural north woods feel on the Superior shoreline. As may be suggested, the cabin is well hidden from adjacent properties and even from a passing water-based perspective. During conversations with Land Services, it was apparent that Mr. Burley's intent was to simply enclose the carport. Given the variance process, we suggested that a structural expansion would be a reasonable request, but he opted to work with the current structure without modification, albeit with walls. This request is innocuous and likely the most unassuming variance entertained by Land Services and the Board of Adjustment in quite some time. Does it meet all owner expectations? We did engage in conversation about short and long-term variance vision, but Mr. Burley seemed content to make do with what he has. That said, he has demonstrated a reasonableness to his request, and there should be no objections to implementation of the same. If approved, the following conditions may be applied to this variance. 1, no construction may be initiated until all necessary permit applications have been submitted to and approved by Land Services. 2, plans must not deviate from those submitted to and approved by the Board of Adjustment at its July 8th, 2020 meeting. 3, no further encroachment on the Lake Superior shoreline shall be allowed. 4, no vegetation shall be removed from the shore impact zone during construction. And 5, the property shall conform to Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County Septic Ordinance. We sent out 22 letters of notification and received no comments.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Burley, are you available?
I am available.
Yes.
I am on short battery though.
Okay.
As we're talking, I may drop you.
Okay, anything you want to add to Bill's narrative?
No, I think, Bill, you've captured it, and, just simply looking to enclose that existing structure to improve the property.
Very good, yeah. I visited the property today, and you can see the carport sits back farther back than the front of the house from the lake, so we're not really, we're not encroaching more so onto the lake. Anything else, sir?
No, that's all I got.
All right. I'm going to open this to the public then. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak to the Burley request, now is your opportunity. Anyone that wishes to speak to the Brian Burley request for a variance, now would be opportunity to speak. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and turn to the board members for their comments or thoughts. Commissioners, or excuse me, board members at this case, anyone have questions or thoughts about this? As I said a minute ago.
Commissioner here.
Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
Just a comment. And first of all, let me direct this toward Bill. Bill, you know that I've always been entertained by your prose, but I really like the line in this one. The request is innocuous and likely the most unassuming variance entertained by Land Services and the Board of Adjustment in quite some time. That line right there and the following remainder of the paragraph is almost music, the way it's written, and pleasant to hear as a board member making a decision. How could I not agree and approve something so well described?
I wrote that for you, Jerry.
Yeah. It must be getting late here.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Jerry. Any other commissioners, any other comments or thoughts, questions?
Michy here, I'll make a motion to approve the variance request with the 5 conditions listed.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve with 5 conditions. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Henniker, yes, I would second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Henniker. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the Burley request. Any further discussion? Commissioners, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Adam Treefel?
Aye.
Jerry Henniker?
Aye.
Judy Machenbacher?
Aye.
Charlie Laboda?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye myself, so we have 5 in favor. So that is granted, Mr. Burley. And we're going to move on to our last item on the agenda tonight is Justin Mueller, request for a variance from the protected water, request for a variance from the protected public water setbacks, a stream on property adjacent to East Coyote Ridge Road. The legal descriptions is part of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 24, Township 61 North, Range 1 West, PID 52-124-4350. Mr. Lien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is case 2020-18V. The background and literature review is a component of this variance narrative packet, and moving to considerations. This parcel was purchased in 2018 and includes approximately 25.3 acres. Property exhibits a diverse upland-wetland mosaic and supports several protected public waterways, including Fall River and tributaries thereof. A 2009 wetland delineation established that most of the wetland resources are associated with the above-mentioned tributaries. The parcel varies topographically, ranging from flat to steep atop a northwest to southeast plain. Bluff resources are present adjacent to Fall River. Following purchase, the applicant constructed a cabin adjacent to the Fall River drainage. The cabin's primary function is as a vacation rental home. Access to the cabin occurs along a cart path with bridging over water resources. In 2020, Mr. Mueller approached Land Services regarding a second cabin site. Site visits with the county wetland specialist, Mitch Travis, confirmed resource presence as per the Michy delineation and resulted in the identification of a feasible cabin site despite potential conflicts with the 100-foot protected water setback. Given that conflict, a variance was identified as a possible venue for setback relief. At this point, several discussion items should be introduced. From a board perspective, the most relatable process to the Mueller water resource setback request is their experience with relief from the typical 100-foot lake shoreline setback. Using a lake shoreline setback scenario as justification for the Mueller request, however, does not provide a reasonable template for several reasons. First, lake shoreline setbacks often include historic buildouts, and as such, the need for variances, that is, practical difficulties of the property, are already established. Second, lake shoreline properties are typically limited in size, are within a denser shoreline residential landscape, and are usually without build-out flexibility, making variance relief a necessity. Were this a conflicted property with ample demonstration that the practical difficulty of construction lies with the property itself, a variance would seem a reasonable consideration. However, the Mueller parcel is over 25 acres, and there are significant upland areas where a cabin can be built without invoking the variance process. In fact, the first cabin was built under that scenario. We understand the allure of being near water. However, shared water resources are protected, and even with the intermittent nature of the waterway, setbacks have been established by the state and adopted by the county for a reason. In some landscapes, broaching the setback is reasonable and functional and the only option. In others, alternatives are readily available. One of Land Service's most common refrains during the formative variance process is, "Don't apply for a variance if you don't need a variance." In this case, a variance is more of a convenience than a requirement. No new resources have been discovered, and the property is effectively a blank canvas. Alternative sites are available and should not prove to be an impediment to the owners. Nevertheless, if approved, these conditions may be applied to the variance request. 1, no construction may occur without the approval of the Cook County Board of Adjustment. 2, all other build-outs on the property shall comply with FAR 3 and Cook County zoning ordinance criteria. And finally, 3, land use permit and septic permit approval shall be necessary prior to the initiation of construction. We sent out 17 letters of notification and received no comments at the time of this narrative preparation.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Mueller, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Would you like to add anything to Bill's commentary?
I would. There's a couple of things in Mr. Lane's narrative I wanted to speak to. The narrative for our variance, it reads that the parcel has 25 acres, and there are significant upland areas that would not invoke the variance process. In fact, the first cabin was built under such a scenario. And there are upland sites that we've identified east of the intermittent creek, and we have built one off-grid cabin on that same side, east of the creek, without a driveway or a bridge appropriate for vehicles. And the process we used to do that was we cut a narrow cart path through the woods. We hauled in over 3,000 pounds of bagged concrete and lumber for the cabin, metal roofing by ATV, and later when the 4-wheeler broke, we did that by wheelbarrow and sled on a quarter-mile path. We also dug 9 5-foot footings by shovel and mixed out concrete in a tub with a shovel. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's possible to do that, and I guess if you put your mind to it, we could do it again. But hopefully the board will find that even though we've done it before, it may be reasonable to request more traditional access than the quarter-mile cart path. And the other option to access that section of the property with the other building sites that would not invoke the variance would be to put in a driveway. But we feel like comparing impact, I guess we compare the impact of putting in a driveway to the east side. That would include cutting trees to the driveway near the watershed and the wetland. It would be moving dirt, manipulating landscape near the creek and the surrounding wetland, installing a culvert, hauling and fill around the culvert and the surrounding wetland, versus what we're requesting the variance for. And in the spirit of, I mean, the reason for the setback for the creek is to preserve the intermittent creek. And our option of the variance would be it's a 28 by 16 cabin, at least 50 feet from the nearest grade of that intermittent creek, built on pillars, installed with small equipment to reduce erosion, with a shed roof sloping away from the creek. So our case that the variance we're requesting would be considerably less impactful to the intermittent creek than creating an access to the other side where this blank canvas that Bill describes is. The narrative also reads, I believe misrepresentatively, that we understand the allure of being near the water. And we've had comments suggest that we're requesting this variance because of preference to be near this intermittent creek. And maybe some of you had a chance to visit the site. And if so, I hope maybe you got a chance to look at that creek. I believe it's a very important watershed. It sheds water during spring and during heavy rain. But if you were to look at it, I mean, it's a dry creek bed with some puddling through vegetation. And again, very important, but this is not something we're not trying to build to be close to this intermittent creek, as the narrative suggests. In fact, we've been trying to find ways to get away from it. It zigzags through that western part of the property, and it has a 100-foot setback. So it's been pinching us off between our any potential build sites between itself and the wetlands and property setbacks. So Ms. Travis has visited the property 3 times, helped identify a building site near the side, on the near side that wouldn't require building a driveway over the creek. And after the 3rd unsuccessful attempt to avoid wetlands, property setbacks, or creek setbacks, we decided to apply for this variance in feeling that it was less impactful than our other options.
Okay, okay, thank you. Anything else you want to add before we open to the public?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will open this up then to the public. Anyone who, in the public who wishes to speak to the Mueller request for a variance on Coyote Ridge Road, now is your opportunity. Anyone that wishes to speak to this request from Justin Mueller, now would be the time to speak up. Well, hearing none, I'm going to then close the public portion of the hearing and turn to the Board of Adjustment for their comments or questions. Commissioners.
I have just a comment. It seems like this may be thought of as a place to put several of these small rusty cabins. And there needs, I don't know if Mr. Mueller is aware that two buildings are what you're allowed. So this would be the second structure and no further building out. Is that correct, Tim?
That's correct, Commissioner Machenbacher.
Okay.
Yes, that's two dwellings, a primary and a secondary dwelling.
Okay, so if they feel like they need to put move here a big house, this eliminates that possibility?
Without a conditional use permit.
Okay.
Right, they would have to come back and ask for a third, and the planning commission has heard those types of conditional uses requests here. In fact, recently over the last few years, we've heard the 3 residential dwellings.
Right. Right. I just want to make sure it's understood that that's how it works. And I don't understand the need for a variance, other than convenience and ease of construction. And I get the impact on the property, but I'm not sure why this would be an exception. Everyone deals with that when they build.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hennifer here.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm looking at this with a great deal of concern, and that we've got more than 25 acres, and within that, all sorts of possible construction areas that do not need a variance. When we grant a variance, we generally do it because of practical difficulties.
there are no practical difficulties here. Nothing qualifies as a practical difficulty. I would agree with Judy's comment that this is a pure convenience or preference, and that's not suitable for a variance. I'm sorry, I can't accept that.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Let's get through the commissioners, and then we'll let you respond. Any other commissioners or board members have comments, questions? Anybody else? I will add that I do agree with both Jerry and Judy. It's while it may be expensive or more difficult to have to cross the Fall River, those aren't costs are not an issue for us for a variance to say it doesn't meet the requirements of a variance. Sir, you want to respond though to comments? Go ahead.
I do. First of all, it's not crossing the Fall River. It would be crossing the intermittent creek.
Okay.
And I believe, my understanding would be the setback that we're trying to protect here for the creek. What is the purpose for that? May I ask? I mean, my understanding that the setback, the 100-foot setback for the creek, to preserve the waterway. Would we agree?
Sure, you can't have, we don't want buildings closer than that, so you're preserving the water.
Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I can.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Yeah, this is Tim Nelson, and the purpose of the setback distances they do take more into consideration than just in terms of physical protection of the property. You have the slope to be concerned about. You got wetlands. You have all the different types of things that physically are there. But also the DNR rules specifically state too how it is aesthetically viewed as from the public waters during the summertime. So that there's more consideration than just the physical protection of the water body.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. This would not be considered a navigable water that people who do not own the property could walk up and down. Is that correct?
When you have if it's a creek, if it's considered, if it has a setback, the water itself would be considered DNR protected waters, and the same standard holds for any of the DNR protected waters. Yes, it may be impractical for someone to be able to do that, but can someone be in the creek, in the navigable waters? That's a DNR question. We don't govern the like a whole trespass issue with regards to waters, but as being listed as a protected waters, that's where those standards occur.
Okay, so I guess our case was that in the spirit of protecting that wetland, that to grant a variance to do so would be considerably less impactful than it's not only economic, but it is true. It is true. It would be economically beneficial to us, and it is also a separate truth that it would be less environmentally harmful to the creek to build the cabin as variance than it would to build a driveway over the creek itself. Unless your suggestion is that we do neither of those, and that because we've built one cabin on a cart path, that is a standard that we are not held to.
We're not holding you to some other standards, sir, but there are requirements to receive a variance. And this practical difficulty of a driveway doesn't meet that. I've heard other commissioners saying the same thing. It doesn't meet that requirement. I understand your logic and your argument, but it does not meet the requirement of a variance, in my opinion. I think I heard a couple other commissioners say that as well. Commissioners, thoughts here?
Hearing no others.
Was that you, Jerry?
Yes, I wasn't sure that I was coming through.
Yeah, I just heard your, a bit of your voice. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay. I'm going to reiterate that I do not see a compelling argument for granting a variance when there are so many options for construction without the variance. The practical difficulty can only be met if there are not practical alternatives for an owner to choose that don't require a variance. Practical difficulties are for conditions where it is the only solution that just is practical. I cannot find any compelling reason to support this proposal.
Thank you, Jerry. Other commissioners? Well, if we don't have any further comments, I'd be open to a motion.
If nobody else is going to make it, I will make it. I would move to deny the application.
Very good, thank you. I have a motion. Do we have a second? The motion is to deny this request. Is there a second?
I'll second Mottenbacher.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny this request. Do we have any other further questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. And this vote, again, is to deny this request. Adam Treefel.
I vote to deny.
Commissioner Henniker.
Aye.
Commissioner Mottenbacher.
Aye.
Commissioner Laboda.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye myself. So it is 5 votes against this, so this is denied, Mr. Miller. I'm sorry, but it is denied. And that brings our meeting to a close. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move Mottenbacher.
Thank you, Jerry. Second on that?
Second.
Is that Jerry or Charlie?
Correct. That was inappropriate.
Okay, Jerry, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Adam Treefel.
Aye.
Jerry Henniker.
Aye.
Judy Mottenbacher.
Aye.
And Charlie Laboda.
Aye.
And I vote as well. So we have 5 votes for. We are adjourned, folks, until next month. Thank you.
See everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Oh, yeah, you shut that off. I think it's on mute there. I don't trust electronics.
Yeah.
Who was it that